No makeup, no script. This is just me talking to you. So my last video was made addressing Catholics about their relationship with LGBT people, either inside or outside of the church. And I wasn't arguing for changing of Catholic doctrine on sexual orientation or gender, just because being an ex-Catholic, I know that that's sort of a losing battle at the moment. So I addressed the video with tips that I had heard from fellow queer Catholics or queer Catholics that had left the church, and just insight from my own experience or whatever. And I threw it all together in a video, called it a letter, and here's what I did with it. I posted it on r/Catholicism because I figured this video is addressed, this letter is addressed to Catholics, so I want it to go to a Catholic audience. And so I brought it to the Catholic audience, and here's what happened. So in my original post, I basically asked them to listen with an open mind, that if they wanted to discourse with me, to do it respectfully. I have unresolved religious trauma. I get to speak about it when I feel ready, and that I did not leave the church due to these feelings of distress, and that I only started to identify as queer months after leaving the church. And I did post this during Holy Week, so I wish them a happy Lent. It's now been about 12 hours since I posted this. The first person to reply was Ahmad, and here's what they had to say. I have watched the whole video and decided to leave it up. I think this video is something that, while many of us would rather not have to be subjected to an open letter, offers a useful perspective advising us how we can approach LGBT people within our communities. I found the video was done in a calm, respectful manner and presents important points for us to consider when we do reach out to those in our churches who are not straight. As OP says, they aren't arguing that the church should change, but that we should try to better understand those struggles with the cross they have been given. If we understand them better, we can help them better, right? With that in mind, please keep comments charitable and in line with our posting and commenting guidelines. If you were looking for a sort of quick overview of how this all went, I think if I had to sum it up, there were some people who came in and seemed perfectly reasonable about the things that I was trying to say. And a lot of people, I would say, the people who engaged with me the most, tend to take the most issue with the second claim I made in the video. Just as a quick refresher, the 3 claims that I made were updating Catholics on the vernacular of the LGBT community, using the language that the LGBT community uses for themselves, and allowing queer people to participate in church parishes. So a lot of them seemed most uncomfortable with the second request, or the second tip. If I had to boil it down, a lot of their claims were that the LGBT vernacular is a form of language imperialism. Being able to dictate the conversation by dictating the language used, or that the church's terms struggling with same-sex attraction, a phrase with more concise language than somebody who says gay, lesbian, bisexual, pansexual. They were more concerned with the use of these terms as a form of passive acceptance or permissibility, or even that using this language in a way claims that sexual orientation and gender is the center point of one's identity, which I never claimed in the video, but that is an argument that I heard a lot when I was in the church. And that is something that I should note about all of this. When it comes to discussing ways of conservative mindsets, because these mindsets seek to preserve tradition and resist change, a lot of the claims that conservative mindsets uphold have been repeated for decades, 10, 20, 30, even more years. So the arguments and the things that I heard from everybody commenting in the subreddit, I had heard for 21 years in the church. I have already personally addressed with myself. I spent so many years trying to support a lot of the mindsets that they brought up to me in the subreddit, and that I have not been able to come to conclusions to support those things anymore. So it was kind of like I was in my element, and while some people may have felt triggered if they would have been in my position talking to people in this subreddit, I found myself quite calm and reasonable, because these were things I had heard for so long. These were things I had considered for years. And so I already have answers ready for them, at least things that I have come to conclusions with. Whether or not we agree, I was not thinking that was really going to happen. Okay, so now that I've babbled on long enough, if you're ready for the tea, I will go through some of the more notable comments I got. If you are asking us to use the correct vocabulary, you should not use the phrase, the biological sex that they were assigned at birth. Biological sex is not something you assign any more than you assign eye color. It is an immutable characteristic that at time may be difficult to correctly assess. That aside, no, it is not necessary to use LGBTQ plus vocabulary when talking about these issues, when the church's vocabulary is better at describing the issues. Same-sex attraction is really the best term for discussing the issue, since it combines the LGBT, I guess that they were talking about pansexual, without making judgment as to the person's wider identity. Yes, everybody should be allowed to be part of the Catholic community, but it does not mean that there is not a necessary conduct when taking on a certain role. That necessary conduct one, I think, is actually, it was something I was trying to address in the video and didn't say very well. I get where this person is coming from a Catholic perspective. I think it really just comes down to a church parish's approach to dealing with queer lifestyles or behaviors. So that's really more of an individual case-by-case thing. Then somebody else responded, biological sex is not something you assign. It is not at birth. It is not necessary to use LGBTQ vocabulary. In fact, I think that vocabulary is dangerous, as it encourages the reduction of the person's self-concept to his or her sexuality. My first counter-argument to that was, may I counter with the idea that calling someone autistic or old reduces them down to their level of ability or age? I would claim, no. These are just characteristics to describe their experience, impacted by their psychology or biology. What do you think? They responded with, I actually suggest the opposite. That is why many are pushing for people first language rather than disability first language. It is better to speak of a person with autism than an autistic person, or even worse, an autist. Never heard that term, but I agree, sounds terrible. Because autism need not define the person. A person is not their disability, just as a person is not their sexuality. But very often among persons who self-identify as whatever letter in the ever-expanding acronym, it becomes the identifier under which every other aspect of life becomes subjugated. I would also argue that people who focus on being a member of an age category find that it also defines them. Identities are multifaceted. Someone's experience, whether it's from culture, age, gender, level of ability, etc., are defining factors of people's experiences and therefore their identity. Person-first language is important because it recognizes the reality that a person's identity is multifaceted. So we're agreeing. And they responded with, thus, making your sexuality the centerpiece of your identity is a deeply problematic thing to do. And I said, I never made the claim in the video that someone's sexuality or gender is the centerpiece of their identity. Calling them bi, gay, or lesbian, for example, instead of a person who struggles with same-sex attraction or a person who is gay, is the same vein as asking people to refer to Catholic people as people who practice Catholicism. Yes, it's true. Yes, it's person-first language. But do we hear people use this terminology? No. I think when it comes to using language, we have to look at what is practical, what is not time-consuming, but what is still respectful and concise language. And calling a person who is pansexual a pansexual person, I have never heard a pansexual person call themselves a person who experiences pansexual attraction or something of the sort. They just say that they're pansexual. It's not a big deal. It's just a part of who they are and how they experience the world, how they navigate their romantic and sexual interests, or whatever. So, that engagement was a little bit tiring, but hopefully my ideas came across okay. And in the comment section of somebody else making a similar argument to the last one, somebody said, I think the difference is that the modern LGBT labels imply action. There is no active will associated with being African American versus Black, or autistic versus person with autism. But there is a definite distinction between saying I struggle with same-sex attraction versus I am LGBT. I said, I would argue there is no assumption of action. The only assumption being the cultural connotation, then that statement stands in my opinion. However, if we are operating under the assumption that people are born with a sexuality and cannot control it, then it is the same as these inactionable characteristics. Someone saying, I am a gay Catholic, does not automatically assume they engage in the lifestyle or not. Their response, you cannot deny the cultural connotation though. We must recognize both that words have cultural meaning that are often more powerful than their scholaristic meanings, and that as Catholics, we have a responsibility to not commit the sin of scandal. Let's just really quick define the sin of scandal. According to the Catechism, scandal is an attitude or behavior which leads another to do evil. The person who gives scandal becomes his neighbor's tempter. So once again, they're saying by using the language, they are showing an attitude of permissibility to the lifestyle. This lovely person who had 3 upvotes said, watched the video, what you ask for is fair as far as it goes. Treat people as you find them is a fine principle to live by. Even better if you make it instinctual. Thank you. Here comes the interaction that I felt was different from the rest of them. It started off with the person and I being quite civil, so I'm surprised that it took the turn that it did. They said, I haven't really interacted with an LGBT person IRL before, but considering the tremendous hostility I've seen them have towards Christian sexual ethics, I am very scared of talking if these things come up. I probably would run in the opposite direction, but your tone has been unusually pleasant. I hope what I've seen online isn't really reflected IRL. I do think that this is a misconception in the same vein that a lot of LGBT people have had experiences with Christian people who have been bigoted, maybe directly to them or indirectly, and just assuming that when somebody is Christian or Catholic, that they're automatically going to be bigoted or rude. It's not true. It's a misrepresentation. It's not all Catholics. Just in the same vein that not all LGBT people are going to be hostile. Probably not even most. It's just that vocal minority, and that's what this person is seeing. That's what this person is used to, is that vocal minority of people who are hostile for whatever reason, whether it be from defensiveness or their own religious trauma, whatever it is. Both sides are scared of and more familiar with that vocal minority that is hostile. I said, I think interacting and talking with LGBT plus people inside and outside the church is really important. It's understandable that due to the lack of queer people you've talked to, you may feel uncomfortable. But I think Christ would encourage dialogue, even if it means listening. I think conversation between individuals and communities is important, necessary, and fruitful. This is when it took an unexpected turn. Well, I've seen your YouTube and your video on Piker. Here's a video he's talking about. Basically, what I say in it is my recent conclusions I have about the school of thought of conservatism or conservatism. And in it, I do state that allowing religious beliefs of protecting traditional marriage and being skeptical of transgenderism, I do find intolerant on a legislative and social level. But in this video, I was not talking about these things. And so I feel like they are outside of this conversation. I was not making those claims in this letter. I knew my audience, and so I catered my points to what I thought was going to be the most reasonable things to say. That being said, Those are my beliefs. I'm not in the church anymore. I do support gay marriage. I do support transgender people. I am queer. So, here we go. I don't think you were really acting in good faith here when your intolerance is that deep. It seems I am disappointed yet again. I'm pretty sure dialogue with LGBT folks who hold your views, ours will never go well. I'll stay away from my own, mostly social, maybe physical safety. There is no dialogue with somebody who has convinced themselves they're being oppressed by anything slightly contradictory to what they've made up. And y'all make up new things every day. If you believe that we are harmful, that would justify anything you do to us as long as you wrap it in some language of social justice. You wouldn't even need to engage in good faith in posts like this, since all you care about is breaking down the oppressive thinking, our faith, for example, by any means. As to your video, I've seen Catholics who held views like you and were part of your communities who became Catholic and conservative, and definitely not because of poo-pooing problematic things like you want us to do. Other points about understanding, listening, and empathizing are well taken, since they already fall under Christian duties anyway. This has been quite a roller coaster for me. I was initially very happy before being black-pilled yet again. Boy. This is a separate video of points that I'm holding outside of this conversation. I don't believe my views on politics and conservatism are related to this one at all. I am not currently a practicing Catholic. I was merely sharing my experience as an ex-Catholic, which I have been open about from the start. I claim in this video that is addressed to you and your community that I am not arguing for the church to change her beliefs on LGBT plus issues, because I was in the church for 21 years, and I know this is not possible, if ever. So no, sharing this video was not in bad faith. I believe both of our views on politics, conservatism, and so forth are not related to this conversation at all. I was sharing to express an outside viewpoint from someone who's been on the inside. So he said, in that video you specifically talked about these issues too. They are related because how you understand dealing with our views is relevant to you wanting us to change our manner of dealing with LGBT ideas. I am not really concerned about politics except when you yourself make opposition to gender ideology in defense of traditional marriage as a part of your politics you see as intolerable. I don't really care about your views on if guns or capitalism are oppressive. I am neither American nor white to care about those issues. I care about the parts about church teaching, and there it wasn't just about points people were holding, it was about how you thought of people holding them. There was no, they are just sadly mistaken, need the right facts, we must make them understand, hear them out. I am sorry for saying that you were acting in bad faith. I presumed too much. I said that out of hurt at the difference in the tones of the two videos. Though I grant that your intentions here are good, I think your other views are inconsistent with engaging with us in charity, though you are nevertheless doing that here. I remain convinced that holding your views about being intolerant to us and framing contentious points to the way you do closes the door to genuine dialogue, if you are being consistent. I have no problem with calling queer people whatever they wish, listening and understanding them, but I'll stay away if they hold militant American cultural war views like yours. Here's my last comment to him. Do as you wish, you don't have to engage with me. I believe those things to be true, and they are not inconsistent with what I state in that video. They were not related. I didn't claim whether or not Catholics should or shouldn't continue to protect traditional marriage in this video, nor that they should change their doctrine on gender. I have my own views on those things, just as you do yours. I am offering tips that heterosexual and cisgender Catholics may have not considered, and I wanted to share a unique perspective. Just as I said above to someone, you listened to the video, and that is all I asked of you in my letter. So thank you for doing that at least. Have a blessed Holy Week. And I got many walls of text from people that I just did not see as constructive to directly respond to. There did end up being 42 comments in this as of 12 hours after posting this in the subreddit. So that's cool. Not only that, but I received 4 awards. I got my first gold award. I'm new to Reddit, and 3 awards, but I should say those were from a friend of mine in a Discord server that I'm in, and they are not part of the Catholic subreddit, and they were there to support me. Seeing as some people upvoted some of the more tolerant comments, I think that while maybe the majority of this subreddit does agree with a lot of the ideas that were presented by the commenters, in the same vein, it seems that there are also people who agreed with what I had to say, maybe agreed on certain things and didn't agree on others. And I heard from some friends outside of this subreddit that there's a lot of traditional Catholicism in this subreddit, which, lucky for me, I grew up in that sect of Catholicism for a while, so I was already familiar with how to engage with people of these views. If any of the Redditors do come across this video, I do want to say thank you for talking with me and listening to the video. I am sorry if it came across as posting in bad faith. I wasn't trying to be deceptive. I am open and honest with the fact that I support gay marriage. I support transgenderism. I'm not here to discuss that today. While in the same vein, I also understand why Catholics believe what they believe. Because I used to think that for a while. It took me many, many years to reconcile with my current thoughts on the LGBT community. So trust me, I get it, I do. And at the end of the day, I would just want to be part of encouraging a dialogue of respect, of acceptance, of just compassion. Even if that means in a community that I no longer engage in. Don't have to change your views. Wish that you would. But I know that realistically won't happen. Or at least, perhaps not even within my lifetime. Anyways, that was just the first 12 hours of posting this in the subreddit. Thank you for watching.